Carl and Brendan here from Games, Brains and a Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial.com for short, and it's track by track time as making a debut on this series. Pretty much every time it seems like a band's making a debut. It is one of the big ones, one of the big heavy metal giants slash power metal giants. It's Helloween. We are looking at their debut album, Walls of Jericho. Of course, the German power metal band released in 1985 by Noise Records. It's the only album that featured Kai Hansen as lead vocalist until the most recent Helloween album, although he continued to act as guitarist on the two following albums. So it's not like he left the band or anything like that. He just didn't feature on vocals. And that was notable because the Helloween I know was not quite this vocalist, because listening to the album, I was like, shit, man, this dude's like Merciful Fate style levels of high. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely got that from it at times.
For sure. Interesting enough as well, in 1988, Walls of Jericho was released on CD. And due to the enhanced capacity of the CD, they decided to resize it up. So the Helloween EP slash mini LP and the song Judas from the Judas EP were added to the Walls of Jericho track listing. But nowadays, that's just a compilation. So if you do go looking for this album, you actually will often find in the streaming services, the basic album doesn't exist. It's this version with 14 tracks, which initially confused me like hell. And I actually ended up doing 3/4 of this track by track before I hit a point. And I don't know what prompted me to look into it, but I was like, something doesn't feel right. I think it was the fact that they're about halfway through. There's this intro almost, this big horn intro. And I was like, that's really weird. Why is it halfway through? And I think that prompted me to think that it was two things put together. And then I went back and realized the original album, which we are covering in this track by track, is 8 tracks only. So, what's your familiarity with Helloween and this album?
I mean, aside from the obvious, of course, I know who Helloween are. I don't never really listen to a lot of Helloween, in truth. I don't know if, like, in a kind of greatest hits or something like that, if I might be like, oh, I know this song, I didn't realize that was them, that sort of thing.
Yep.
But I didn't get that on this album at all. I don't feel like I've ever heard anything on this album before.
I second that. Same. Very, very sketchy sort of history rhythm. Truth be told, if you asked me to name 3 songs by Helloween, I'd struggle to name even one. However, like, my most stuff with them was on the latest album, weirdly enough, because that was reviewed for the site, you know, and that was a lot of fun. But this one, yeah, listening to it, didn't recognize a single track, didn't really register that strongly with me either. But we'll get into that, I suppose, as we go along. Beginning with Walls of Jericho. Did you recognize the theme, the music that they do in horn format? That is this introduction.
No,
it is pretty famous. If you know your, I don't say niche, kind of niche horror,
right?
So it is the Silver Shamrock theme from Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, the Halloween movie that didn't have Michael Myers in it technically. It's that happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, that Silver Shamrock. You know it. If you know the movie, you know it. It's that, obviously done with massive trumpets and horns. It's a cool intro. That then kicks into one of the heavier sounding tracks in the album, really. That's it. It's an intro.
Yeah, I didn't write anything about Halloween, so mine was like, it's an intro, not much to say.
Yeah, cool. It's that in it. If you know it, it's kind of cool, intriguing, because they're obviously called Helloween and this was their debut. But if you don't know it, it's gonna have no bearing. It's just gonna be like, all right, that's cool. It's got horns and trumpets and shit.
Yep.
Oh, but it kicks into Ride the Sky, and this is massive, fast, frantic, and blistering. It puts a bit of a smile on my face, as it's exactly what I kind of want to hear from this band and what I almost expect. The riffs are solid, the vocals are screaming, it's filled with hook off the hook. I think it kind of makes me feel a bit like Taller.
Yeah, I liked it. Surprisingly, I good instant or very early on in the song, right near the very beginning of it, you kind of got a taste of what the vocals were going to be with a pretty high pitched scream, and I was like, oh, okay, But I love the pace of the energy. I thought the drums, bass, guitars were absolutely having it. I do like the vocals, but not only in this song, but in this song, there are points where I feel like I'm kind of on that line between like, oh, I don't know, and then I'm like, oh, actually, it's okay. And I think overall, there's like enough in the song that I kind of like didn't mind the vocals. Like it wasn't, there's so much else going on as well that it wasn't like, you know, a real problem for me that he was going like super high. And also it's got like some next level guitar solo and shit going on, man. Across this album as a whole, to be honest, but like they go to town with the solos.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it's, a lot of them are really, really good. Let's stop here momentarily and note then, because say you're watching us, listening to this, this review effectively, and you're not too aware of what we're talking about in regards to your disdain for these Merciful Fate style highs. Just explain that.
Sounds shit, don't I? No, I'm joking. I don't know. It's just personal taste in it. Um, I don't. I don't think across like all of my years of listening to metal, I've ever really gone for that style, that
Yeah.
high style. It's not something I purposely do. It's not like I don't think it's metal or anything like that. It is just that when I listen to it, I find it can be so overpowering over the instrumentation that I think sometimes in Merciful Fate for me, especially, it detracts from the rest from the whole package.
Yeah.
Like that, and that's what it is. And I don't think, obviously, more songs to come, but on Ride the Sky, the difference between this and the Merciful Fate sort of thing for me when I listened to it is I felt like while he was going high, he wasn't only going high. There was other range in there as well, and the music and the vocals kind of feel like they're on the same level to me. So actually, he was going high while the guitars and drums were also clear, and it wasn't like he was going high and for a minute all I can hear is like So yeah, I don't know what it is. Like I don't know. It's the same with lots of things. You know what I mean? Like same. We all have. I'm sure everyone's the same. Like we all have these little things like that just don't work for you, man. For me, it's always been. The thing is, like with the high vocals, right? It's not even that I hate all high vocals. I don't. It does depend on the song and whether or not it kind of makes the whole thing work for me or not. It's like, Iron Maiden, for example, do high vocals. I've got no issue with Iron Maiden, and there's lots of songs by them I like, including lots of screamy kind of ones.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, I don't know what it is. It's that level, man. The minute it gets to the point where that's all I can hear, then that's where I struggle. I kind of just want them to shut up.
No, I get it. There were a couple of times for me in this. We do, it's no secret. I'm not throwing this at Brendan as if I disagree. I actually agree with a lot of what he says there. Often someone's a bit more okay with it than you are. But the reason why we keep bringing Merciful Fate into it is I think that's our bar setter of where it might be too much, that consistent high. And like, it's only bringing into because there are times on this album where I thought, oh, fuck me, that sounds like Merciful Fate. Yeah. Reptile. It's a short slab of foot tapping, head banging, heavy metal goodness. No nonsense, no issues from me. It comes, it goes.
Yeah, I liked it as well. I think the drums are really good again. I like the drums a lot across this album.
Yeah.
I like the energy and the pace of the song. I like the guitars again. I also thought because you hear it quite a lot over the whole album, but the bass is often really quite prominent, even in the guitar solos, which I quite liked as well. It's quite a different sound. It's like right at the front.
Yeah.
Decent chorus, decent solo. So yeah, good song.
Guardians, fancy guitar work here. The bass, as you just said, is really going for it here. However, this is a track where the vocals don't quite work for me. I think it's a little messy sounding, but I do really like the guitar soloing. So it ends up being like a bit of a mixed bag for me, where I'm like, I like the guitars, I like the soloing, I like the bass. It's a bit all over the place, and the vocals aren't really doing it for me. So I'm kind of in the middle.
Yeah, I started off a bit like that. This was a strange one for me because I kind of wrote it down while I was listening to it, so I was kind of capturing, the phases of my thoughts. And I enjoyed the start. I thought it was nice and chaotic with that prominent bass again.
Yeah.
I thought it was when he started singing, because actually the song prior to this in Reptile, he doesn't really do any of those highs at all. And I thought it was quite funny. I was like, oh, he saved his voice over Reptile to really fucking go for it here. And then at this point, I went into like, I'm really not sure on these vocals. They are starting to bother me. They're just getting a little bit too high and a little bit distracting.
Yeah.
Then the chorus hits, and I'm like, okay, this chorus is fucking great. And I kind of feel now like actually the chorus kind of makes up for everything else, and now you can do what you like for the rest of the song. Drums are good, nice instrumental sections with those sort of galloping riffs. And then by the end of this song, I just thought like after an unsure start where I didn't feel fully on board, I felt like it just kept getting better and better and better and better until it got to the end with that chorus and the kind of bigger emphatic backing to it. And I started off with, yeah, this is getting too much, and ended with, this is fucking brilliant.
Oh, wow.
So it was quite the journey on this song.
Incredible. Amazing. All right. Phantoms of Death. So at this point, I was a bit like, I thought this band was supposed to be a power metal band. I kind of think I understand what power metal is. And to this point, I'll be honest, I was like, maybe that was more later in their career. And early on, they were more heavy, just a heavy metal band. But here, I think it becomes a little more prominent, as this has got a symphonic uptick within it. It's a very anthemic album. And it's one that I just found I enjoyed the more it went on and on and on.
Yeah, see, for me, Guardians was the point where I thought, now I can see why people put them as a power metal band, but not for the whole song, the chorus. It was the chorus. I was like, that's a power metal chorus. Yeah. And I felt like that continued here as well. I really do quite enjoy this song. I think it's got some good riffs. I pay a lot of attention to lyrics and often try and read lyrics and stuff like that.
Of course.
It's nice and dark, tells a story, which I quite like, which also goes on with that kind of power metal vibe. Obviously, like a lot of power metal, even today, it comes with a huge dollop of cheese as well. But, that's okay.
Yeah.
Great drums, nice simple chorus. I think the vocals are good. I actually enjoy the vocals in here. He kind of does go high at points, but he also goes for quite a lot of other ranges as well. Solo again is absolutely fucking mental and lengthy. And although I didn't mind it in terms of the song, I kind of thought it was funny that like when the solo was going on, it felt like it went on for so long that I remember listening to it and thinking like, it's really cool, but I don't know. I'm like, I can't even remember what the song's like now. How are they going to get back in, like transition back into the song? And then what they did, I was like, that's really funny, because they didn't. They just sort of stopped. And then it carried the song on again. It was just like the solo just went silence back into the song. I was like, that's what you do when you don't know how to transition back in. I'm sure that's not what it was. That's what I took from it.
No, I get that. It almost feels like, listen, we've got this banging solo, but we can't fit it anywhere. Fuck it, just stick it in there. We'll worry about it afterwards. Let the mixing phase deal with that.
Yeah, they couldn't, so they just went, stop.
Metal Invaders. With a title like that, I feel like you kind of know what you're getting, and it sticks exactly to type. It's a bang and blast of heavy metal, simple as that. Enjoyable, but not setting my world alight at all, except for the bass. It's come up several times. Brennan mentioned it first. I'll follow it up and I'm bringing it up again. The bass kicks all kinds of ass in this, man. One of the coolest things about this album overall is that prominent bass. Yeah,
it's quite different to hear it like so clearly all the time. Like even in the guitar solos, I really quite enjoyed that. I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
If I was the lead guitarist, I'd be like, dude, get off my track. I'm assuming the bassist mixed it or whatever.
Yeah, that's what it is.
But yeah, Metal Invaders, I guess it's that whole, obviously the minute you include the word kind of metal in your album title, you expect like a certain amount of, song title, you expect a certain amount of cheese anyway. But also if you've got to like do the whole metal thing, then you kind of have to go for it a little bit, and they do. It's quite frenetic, it's quite thrashy, good, really good drums again, the riffs are decent, vocals do get close to that line on occasions for me again. I like the speed of the lyric delivery, which I also thought was pretty cool, simple chorus and the overall cheesy side to it. Again, also mentioned the strong solo with the additional bass flair, so decent.
Yeah. Gorgar, keeping it straightforward, albeit with their penchant for grander segments and bass-driven hums. This track gets the blood well and truly pumping, exciting and a little bit dangerous. The brashness of the heavy groove is right up my street. I really like this one.
Yeah, so do I. But like not as much as I'd like some of the others. thought it had like a lot of cool things again. Yeah, I mean, pretty much in every song I mentioned the drums, and again, I just thought the drums are great. It's one of those things sometimes in bands, and you know, you got the bass kind of prominent, you got solos going off all over the place, and the vocalist is obviously gonna grab attention, you know. But behind all of that shit, man, the drummer is just fucking going for it. Good lead guitars in the intro. It's got a nice sort of stompy rhythm to it. No idea what Gorgar is. I kind of took from the song as I was reading the lyrics along with it. I think he's some sort of robot, but I wasn't entirely sure. You know, so it's quite a silly song. It's quite a cheesy song. It's got a lot of cool stuff. It's got a familiar melody that kind of plays out in the middle at some point on the guitars out of nowhere, which is like, I think, a piece of classical music, but they play it on guitars, but I couldn't quite place it. It was just like, oh, I know that. What's that from? I spent quite a while trying to figure it out. I even tried to use that bloody app to play it and go, what's this from? And it just kept coming up with Helloween. Like, oh, damn it. That was quite annoying. But yeah, so it's quite an odd song, I think, at times as well, but like it quite quirky. It's got some odd kind of guitar notes and screeches and stuff like that. So it's quite interesting, but just, yeah, not quite grabbing me.
Fair dues, fair dues. We're up to the penultimate track for this album then, and it is Heavy Metal, in brackets, is the Law. And again, I kind of thought, well, this is going to be very predictable. And it is. But you mentioned the drumming. I'm going to mention it here as well. They're on fire here. To the point where I think they overshadow everything else in a positive way. The rhythm is neck-breaking shit, though there's no knocking the smash mouth style of the guitars or the punch of the vocals. It's pure speed and adrenaline, made all the more enjoyable because of one hell of an anthemic chorus.
Yep. Yeah, it's a cool song. Like the heaviness, like the energy. Also mentioned the drums. It's quite frenetic. It's obviously complete nonsense and completely silly. He refers to us as Metallians at one point, which I was like, that's kind of weird. But it's got like cool stuff going on. You can't help smile. Good solo, and the whole kind of sort of third part of the song coming towards the end, which is just repeated shouts of heavy metal, and then the kind of crowd sounds doing metal and that. While it's cheesy and it's really silly, I'm also aware that if they were like playing live at a festival and I had a few beers inside of me, I'd be very much joining in that and having a great time doing so, you know.
Agreed. It's also a track I feel that dates it. It feels exactly where it belongs in when it was made. And that brings us to the finale of How Many Tears. And I don't know about you, right? Without listening to this track and reading that title and knowing its position, did you expect a ballad? Because I fucking expected a ballad.
I don't know if I expected a ballad, but I expected, I guess, the typical power metal album closer, which might have been like a 9, 10, 11, 12 minute long thing that was part ballad, part something else. And you know what I mean? Like just the epic closing of a tale, you know.
Fair. But what we get is a strong continuation of what we've heard in the album. Fast, frenetic metal. That's been the staple of the record. No complaints from me, though. It's headbanging gold. Strong, powerful, and bassy finale that I enjoyed.
Yeah, same. I thought it was a good song. Nothing particularly new compared to anything that happened on the album so far. Strong vocals, good drums, bass, guitars. You know, yeah, it's just like, I guess the only thing that, but I enjoyed it, but I thought was quite odd, I suppose, or interesting with it is that the solo. We mentioned solos in this album obviously quite a bit, but I checked like kind of the times and afterwards, and the solo makes up over half of the song. Which is like crazy, man. It goes on through so many phases. You know, and I think it's fantastic and all that. Don't get me wrong, I love it. I'm not complaining about it whatsoever. But I did think like when the solo started, and I was like, oh shit, there's like 3.5 minutes still to go in this. And according to the lyrics, there's only like one more chorus coming after this. And then like 3 minutes later, the solo was still going. And on Apple Music, when you have solos come on the lyrics, when you read the lyrics, it comes up with these 3 dots and they slowly move across until they're complete. And after about 1.5 minutes on it, what like dot 1 still was still the only one lit up. It was like hasn't even moved into the second phase yet. So I thought that was like, wow, fucking hell. They really went for it here.
Yeah, it is. It is a strong ending. Oh, to an overall a strong album, I think. You know, there's no track on this that I thought was bad. I thought, surprisingly, when I really stopped and thought and went, okay, this came out in 1985. I was kind of thinking, man, not that I would have, because I'd have been one, but had like I'd been old enough to hear this, I think this probably would have stood out from the pack quite strongly in what was a very strong period for the 80s anyway.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I came out of it really, really enjoying it. Just one of those things that you kind of sometimes listen to these things and look back and think like, yeah, why have I never listened to Helloween properly? But there you go. But I have now, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, and they have many more albums that we will potentially cover further down the line. But for now, we are going to do top 3 tracks. So you can take this one. Go on first.
All right. So How Many Tears, Phantoms of Death, and my number 1, Guardians.
Oh, completely opposite. In that we don't share any. I've got Ride the Sky, I've got Gorgar, and I've got Heavy Metal is the Law. But I think it's all quite interchangeable here. Small things that make some tracks better, more enjoyable for me.
Yep.
There it is. That's Walls of Jericho by Helloween. You've got any thoughts on it? You know what to do. Let us know in the comments.
Thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please help us out by giving us a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. If you really liked what you saw, consider donating to keep the website and channel running by buying us a coffee via our coffee page or picking up some merch from our Big Cartel store. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as via our social media, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, as well as listen to our interviews via SoundCloud, Apple Music and Spotify. Just search for GBHBL. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?